We have about 30 seconds before we get started. 30 seconds before we get started. Okay, thank you very much. On the stage now, we have our candidates, our district candidates, with our district questions. Ladies and gentlemen in the back, one mic please. I'm so sorry, we're getting started with the forum. I'm getting started with district question number 1. Thank y'all so much. This question is from Indivisible. What do you see as the main challenges in your district, and how do you propose solving them?
Hi, I'm Mike Rayburn, and I'm running for City Commission District 2. Any questions? There, ready? Hey there, I'm Mike Rayburn. I'm running for City Commission District 2, that's Northwest Gainesville. I think our number one problem is the City Commission does not listen to us. I was part of the group fighting to keep them from tearing down the St. Michael's Church. And the City Commission did not listen to us, did not support us. Our commissioner was District 3 at the time, it's very confusing. Did not participate, ignored us, ignored all the pleas, and now that lot is sitting vacant, and it's just an eyesore. So we need City Commission who will listen, and what I mean by listening is democratic listening. Cornel West talks about this in Democracy Matters, a really important book everyone should read. Democratic listening is not just, oh, I heard you, pat on the head. It's everyone has a seat at the Democratic table, and we work things out until we come to a resolution that we can all agree on. Our number one problem is the democratic process is broken down because we have a city commission that is arrogant and doesn't listen to anyone at all. And if you elect me, I'll change that.
Always let someone else use the other way first. So, my name is James Ingle, I'm running for Gainesville City Commission District 2. And I'd say what kind of separates, is really the basis of District 2 is there are a lot of just blue-collar, working-class neighborhoods. Gainesville is a great place to live. It's a hard place to earn. And I think that affects District 2 as much as it does the rest of the city. What we need is good, decent paying jobs with a real career and a real future. We need some good transportation. RTS doesn't do a whole lot of run around up on the northwest side of town. People need opportunities. District 2 is a great place. I enjoy living there. You can all see where it kind of needs to be better, and I enjoy being part of what makes that happen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ed Book. I'm also running for Gainesville City Commission District 2, that is primarily West and Northwest Gainesville. And the question relates to what's unique about District 2, and what I'd more like to focus on is that we all have some problems that we can work on in the city. So I'm a representative being elected by District 2, but I represent all city voters, whether it's good roads, good recreation, affordable housing, and affordable living for those in poverty. Those are problems we should work on collectively and not focus on it for a district in the area. One other thing I'd like to say is, and it's worth using some of my time, is there's roughly 9 progressive organizations that hosted this forum, and then the organizers of the Cotton Club. And that in and of itself tells us that we should be working together for common goals and common ground for the entire city of Gainesville, not District 2, 1, or 4. So thank you.
Well, my name is Dijon King, and I'm running for Gainesville City Commission District 3. You know, I grew up in Gainesville, Florida, and I look at District 3, and it's a wonderful district. We're blooming. We're going great. But as he said, I may be a commissioner in District 3, but I make decisions in all the districts. My job is to make sure that it's fair around the board, that equality is fair. It's my job to make sure that our communities stay as our communities. It's my job to work for you, to be the voice for you. And as a citizen from Gainesville, Florida, a AGH baby, I know you know what that is. That's who I am. I'm for you. So that's my goal, that we work together as a unison in our community and have someone that is from this town in that position to make changes for the better good of the city of Gainesville and District 3. Thank you.
I'm Casey Willis. I'm running for Gainesville City Commission District 3 as well. And this district is mostly southwest Gainesville, west of 13th, south of Arthur, and around Butler Plaza. This district is one that gets forgotten. I think it is underserved, and partially because of the oxygen that is being burned up in this election about a few couple of issues that are, just the most hot button. But this district is probably 90% renters. It is in the form of apartments and townhouses and quadplexes and duplexes and some single household, single family neighborhoods. But this area of town gets forgotten. Renters' rights are important to them because that's where a bunch of the renters live. We get forgotten when it comes to our neighborhood park that has been sort of prioritized but has not been secured. And the death in our streets, whether it's in a car or on a bicycle or walking, or just not even upgraded RTS, even though that is where the RTS riders are largely coming from, this District 3 has been forgotten.
Good evening, my name is Patrick Engel. I am running the third candidate running for District 3 City Commissioner. I'm in it to work with you. I'm already establishing relationships with the community, partnerships, out to know what the problems. I'm already listening to you. I know the problems. Well, there's people who have always problems. My responsibility as District 3 City Commissioner is to do District 3, represent you first, and then there's City of Gainesville mainly as a whole. No one will be forgotten with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Christian Newman. I'm running for District 4, which is the center of Gainesville, and all the other districts surrounding. I'm a long-term Gainesville person, and I'm very invested in our community. So the question is, what's the main challenge in our district? So right now, what I'm hearing from voters is essentially focused on two main things. One is the changes to the single-family zoning, which the mayor's talked a lot about. I've come out very strongly that I'm not in favor of it. And the other thing also has been about GRU and the cost and all those issues. But I think there's also an issue of lack of transparency and a lot of frustration around public participation and direct engagement with the neighborhoods. And that's something that I think we all need to focus on. And then finally, Gainesville is changing, but we can change in a way that we can sort of maintain the character of Gainesville. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Eastman, running for Gainesville City Commission District 4, and as my opponent said, our district runs right through the middle. It's the only district that really touches all the way from East Gainesville to West Gainesville, and the neighborhoods are as diverse as the people are. We have working class neighborhoods like my own that are really worried about the rising costs of living. You have places near the University of Florida really worried about losing the character and the feel of the Gainesville that they love. I've knocked on thousands and thousands of doors across this district. People, what they really want to see is that they want to elect folks that are going to solve problems, that are going to work with their fellow commissioners, and that are going to work with the community to find ways that we can work together and move things forward, that are going to find ways to address our climate issues. A lot of worry about climate change, that we're going to grow in a way that protects our neighborhoods and protects the folks that live there, that we're going to ensure that our parks and our quality of life continue. And then we're going to do that as one community together. It's a great diverse community, and I'm really excited to be running to represent it.
Thank you, Ms. Eastman. Question number 2. This question is from Graduate Assistants United and Dream Defenders. And we're going to start with the younger version of Mr. Engel, if I will. UF has faced scrutiny regarding recent decisions concerning political interference, academic freedom, and low wages. What is your understanding of the relationship between UF and the city of Gainesville? And do you think UF is doing enough for the community?
So I've got quite a bit of experience in this area. we get some help from UF in this community. It certainly shaped what Gainesville is, but they could be a much better. You know, I've been endorsed by Graduate Assistants United and United Faculty of Florida because I was there when we were trying to make UF be a better neighbor and allow professors freedom of speech and allow a living wage for graduate assistants. We've got limited levers that we can use to really push UF in the direction we want them to go on issues here in town. But they're important levers, and I don't think we use them enough. When UF wants to expand, they have to come to the city for zoning, for permission to do that. Making sure that we get a good deal out of UF when they come to us and need something is going to be very, very important. Because again, we have very limited leverage to use, and it's important to use what we have.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Mr. Book?
So the answer about does UF do enough for the city of Gainesville? I think everybody says no. I say no. They do not. It's a gigantic organization. It has tremendous money, resources, education, resources, and technical and complex types of technology that can be used to better the city of Gainesville. What are two hardcore examples of things that you have to do when they build? Their building should be not tax exempt. It should be utilizing economic drivers in the city of Gainesville to build that housing so that it's taxable and it benefits all of us as residents. The first thing. The second thing about the University of Florida is they should be looking to our public safety utility, our public power utility for some of their power needs, because by doing that, that would provide us additional economic sources and income to benefit the city. Thank you.
Well, the answer to that question is they don't do enough, have never done enough, and people are suffering, and we're tired of it. So this is the first thing we need to do, or they need to do. They need to pay their fair share in electric costs and use our services. It is disrespectful that they do not use GRU. Florida Power doesn't have their back. The City Commission does. Yes, we may not have much leverage, but what we can do is take them to the table and say, listen, okay, you want this, this is what we want. And the thing about it is we have to mean it. We can't be soft, we can't be timid, we can't be scared. It is time for us to fight, not only for the citizens of Gainesville, for those that are less fortunate, and we must get on the job. So that's my commitment, getting on the job and getting on their nerve and having a seat at the table and they can't move. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane. Mr. Williams?
I think I got on UF's nerve last year. I'm a UF worker, and I joined the steering committee of United Campus Workers before we even announced our first meeting, and to form a new union for 12,000 workers at UF that are not eligible for the existing unions, because this is going all the way back to Republican governors and board of governors, and how they broke the existing unions to little pieces, and we had to build up. We're just now rebuilding. This is 10, 12 years later. It's been mentioned that we have a few levers. They actually do use some of our services, fire and rescue, which they do not pay for. But if they want to be a top 5 university, they've got to have top 5 pay for the people who really make the university run. The 500 custodial staff who get paid about $15 an hour, and it's just not enough. Their health insurance is pretty good, but $15 an hour is enough. The graduate workers, the researchers, all of the admin assistants like I am, or just barely one step up from an admin assistant. I'm one of those UF workers. They have to do better by the city.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Engel, I am not a UF student. I am not a Gator. Only moved here in 2016. UF is not going to get any favors from me. So, if they want a deal, they need to give more than what they're giving now for that. We have to build the sewer. Maybe price control, putting on a cap on student tuition fees. Make the tuition more affordable to the students attending the tighten the bill. Get them, put in strategies and you have to cooperate more with the city.
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
Thank you so much for the question. So the answer is, yeah, UF has not done enough, and I think, again, there's not a whole lot of levers, but I do think that there are some things to do. I mean, I was a student at UF, and one of the things I think we can do as a city, we could be engaging with the unions, the student unions, and other organizations that associate with UF to try to bond together to try to help UF make some better decisions. But we also need to sort of understand the motivations of UF and try to figure out ways that we can incentivize behaviors for the benefits of ourselves. The last thing that I want to sort of talk about is that we also need to sort of understand that under our current governor and the legislative administration, they're going to look at the stick of the Gainesville as much as they can right now because we are the blue dot within CFRA. So we need to be very strategic in how we approach that and work collectively as we can to try to get the things that we sort of need.
Thank you for the question. UF has not been a great partner to the city of Gainesville, and that's been true for many, many decades. I was part of the process a number of years ago, the UF Strategic Development Plan. I served on the steering committee, showed up, and we had a new president, Kent Fox, and Charlie Lane come in. And I showed up to an early morning breakfast, started getting on them about how they need to be working better with our small businesses here in the city of Gainesville, how this is a new start for them with the new president coming in, and started joining that process. I was optimistic for where that was going to go. I don't think a whole lot has come out of that. What we need to be doing now is getting on them for, Casey Willits mentioned this a bit earlier, but they do not pay fire assessment fees. Many, many universities around the United States pay their city for fire assessment fees. We are currently helping them out with fire, and they are not paying anything for that. And we need to be continuing to push them to pay their workers a better wage. There's nothing better that can be in our community than ensuring that our largest employer is paying better. It's why I stood with the United Campus Workers when they launched, and it's why I've been endorsed by the Graduate Assistants United, because I think this is such an important issue.
Thank you, Ms. Rayburn.
Yes, thank you. No, of course, UF does not carry their fair share. And as has been mentioned, I like most of everything that was said here. The thing I will add is the best way to hold UF accountable is to make UF not the best place to work in town. Our real problem is that we're too dependent on UF. We're a company town, and the company doesn't pay any taxes. So we need to get our own life and grow our economy in ways that are not related to UF. So that being a custodian at UF is not your best option, or your second best option, or your fifth best option. But Gainesville, because of the city commission, what we can't really do is push UF around. What we can do is become more business friendly and compete better with Ocala and Alachua for good jobs, good paying jobs, and then UF will have to pay more if they want anyone to work there.
Thank you. Question number 3. This question is from all candidate forum organizations, and it's as follows. The City Commission is considering getting rid of single-family zoning in Gainesville. What do you see as the pros and cons of this decision? And are you in favor or against the proposal, Mr. Book?
Okay, so again, my name is Ed Book with Gainesville City Commission District 2. And like many of the candidates up here, we've talked about this impact of single-family residential housing. I am completely 100% opposed to zoning single-family residents in neighborhoods and allowing a quadruplex or multiple units in one particular area. The irony here is we have people in poverty and in need. And affordable housing is very, very complex. It's about affordable living. It's transit, it's transportation, it's better utilities, and it's good living space. And so one solution of merely rezoning and allowing someone to buy a home and then rent multiple units will not solve it. If it would have worked in the last 30 years in College Park. It's not going to happen. We have a real need, but this is the wrong solution.
As the chair of the Alachua County Affordable Housing for 10 years and still current, I oppose that. We have to understand that in our community, we have families that will be displaced, particularly on the east side. The values of those properties will come to none. People will buy them up, and they will destroy our neighborhoods. And that's for every side of town. The city commission ought to be ashamed of themselves. Now let me just say this. Not only am I not against it, I'm not against it. Or I'm against it, excuse me. But what I will say is this. I'm ready to repeal it if they try it. Because they already got a plan to try it. And I want to have every resource that I need to be able to repeal this thing so that our families can live a great, prosperous life and your life is not disturbed. We ought to get sick of this. It's time to stand up. It's time to hold us accountable, including myself, and let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kane.
So Southwest Gainesville is a huge portion of the rental, housing in the city. It's overwhelmingly. And when Gainesville banned and made illegal apartments across huge swaths of the city, 60-65%, the someplace else where apartments end up is in Southwest Gainesville, is in my district, specifically District 3. That's where it ends up. I rented in this town for 7 years, finally bought a little apartment last year. I live in an apartment complex. I live in 17 units per acre. It's a wonderful place. We're all great people. We have neighbors. I live in a neighborhood. The kind of language we use against simple housing makes monsters of the people who live in it. It is negative. It divides this community. I support figuring out how we have duplexes and triplexes and quadplexes mixed into all neighborhoods, because those are particularly high opportunity neighborhoods. Everyone should be able to move into those neighborhoods in the smallest, most affordable way they can get into those neighborhoods, not big, huge mansions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Engel, District 3 City Commissioner. Actually, I opposed for inclusionary housing where I prefer the city to build on existing city-owned lots, more affordable units. While my district is a majority of rental units, and it's a great neighborhood, it's designed, I don't want to oppose that type of neighborhood or that type of system in other districts that are vastly single-family homes. I really do oppose that. It works in some neighborhoods, it won't work in others. I do, and to bring in more, make it much more affordable, and also bring in more business friendly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We need to be focusing on protecting neighborhoods and strengthening our neighborhoods across Gainesville. Single-family zoning needs to be an option for our residents, and so I am adamantly opposed to this. The three main reasons why I'm opposed to this right now is, one is the city has actually not done real public participation in the neighborhoods where this is potentially going to impact those neighborhoods. They've not provided any analysis showing whether they're good or bad things. They're just projecting that, hey, this could be good in the future. And then lastly, I don't believe that there's any evidence that this will actually improve our affordable housing issue. And again, as a scientist, someone with my background, before we're going to make decisions like this, we need to make sure that there's evidence that things will actually occur. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
I'm against the zoning change, and the answer is really simple. I think planning needs to be planned. We need to be looking at where exactly we want to put new things in. We need to be talking with the affected neighborhoods. We need to be working with folks on the ground to figure out where that makes the most sense. It's the same reason that in 2018 I opposed something called Gainesville Rise, which my opponent voted for. He was on the city plan board. That would have put single-family zoning, eliminated it across the city of Gainesville. I think that is not the way that we need to be doing it. I think we need to be doing it on a parcel-by-parcel, neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis. And that's been my stance and continues to be my stance.
Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Thanks, appreciate it. Hey, yeah, I am completely against this proposal, and I'll tell you why. I lived in Raleigh when they did this in Raleigh. I was running a homeless shelter near downtown on the edge of an affordable housing neighborhood, and they enacted a very similar law, and I watched immediately. They came in and developers bought up all those triplexes and quadplexes, demolished all of them, and built these McMansion townhouses. Didn't even have garages or driveways. They had to park on the street. And they sold these things for like $800,000 each. And guess what they did on the edge of their neighborhood? A homeless shelter. So gentrification just took over like that. The same thing will happen here if anything happens at all, if we pass this. It will accelerate gentrification, which has already happened. So we have to oppose this in the strongest terms. This is another example of the city commission not listening. I mean, you saw David Ariel up here tonight, not listening to you, very, very deaf to what you were saying about this issue, right? And so I agree, I would work to repeal this. I know someone said once it's done, it can't be undone. Oh, there are ways to undo things. And if I'm elected, we will.
Thank you,
we will
Mr.
undo it.
Whitmire.
Thank you.
That's your time. Mr. Engel?
So this is pretty easy. No, I oppose this. However, I do think it is important to have a wide variety of housing all across Gainesville. I think it's a worthy goal. I just don't think this gets accepted. So I think there's more important things we can do to actually get affordable housing in Gainesville. We can hold developers accountable when they come into our neighborhoods. That is going to be a huge difference in how we're doing things now. What we've done for affordable housing up to this point in Gainesville has mostly been given incentives. And that really needs to change to make requirements. You know, holding developers accountable, giving some realistic impact fees, so that we have to go these capital improvements to you, instead of the ratepayers picking all that up, the developers pay for the impact that they're having on the community. Making sure that they're beholden to the community that they're coming into, that they're paying their fair share of these bills, helps all of us.
Thank you, Mr. Engel. Question number 4 comes from Black Voters Matter and National Women's Liberation. There has been a consistent increase in youth gun violence in our community. What do you think are contributing factors to this increase? And what do you think are viable solutions that you would implement when elected? Mr. Kane, let's start with you.
Well, as a business owner of a security company, the first thing that we gotta do is we gotta bring jobs for our young people. I remember in this community where they had jobs, they were at nice places, and they were able to work and they had things to do because we don't have anything to do. I also think we need to get a water park. We got a little small one over there. Let's go big. Let's get a big one. I think we also need to understand this generation. It's a different generation. They see things different. They hear things different. And they move different. But I think if we do those things, if we get them back to work, if we just start encouraging them to pull things together and have a seat at the table and come together as a community. Because we ain't been sitting at the table, we've been sitting at home in our kitchens eating and getting bigger and bigger, but not helping our communities. We gotta help our young people. They're in trouble. And we gotta save them by helping them. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think in Gainesville, it's tough for young people to have a job because one of the things is we've got a huge university. If just a small portion of them stick around after graduation and just do a little this, do a little that, they take a job that moved in from a community member who grew up here. And I think that's really rough. Having jobs and purpose for youth is important. Whether it's your job that you like, whether it's the ability to actually afford to get out from your parents, out from underneath their roof. The affordable housing issue is something you can't cut out of this because part of that purpose of having your own job, having your own place, having pride, those are things that anyone who, when you first move out, you spend a lot more time doing dishes and cleaning than you ever realized your mother or your parents did for you. So I think that having that purpose, whether it's also through our parks program and other places where we engage youth and give them a sense of purpose and include them in our community and make a place for them, I think those things are important. And if y'all don't know, our timekeeper, not just 30 seconds, counts down 5, 4, 3. It's amazing. I don't know if y'all can see it.
That's right.
Today, for District 3, first, we need, it's lack of education. We need to educate more about the guns like that. It's a protective amendment. We can't regulate against it. Otherwise, we'll get into more trouble. But we can get more education. I also believe with more activity centers for the youth and for anybody who even older activity center that people can get engaged and not resort to violence with that. And also to improve the participation of the students, of the young people, so they have a chance to make it on their own and not have to stay with mom and dad all the time. Thank you.
This is actually very personal to me for a couple reasons. One is when I got out of college, I did Teach America and I taught in the Mississippi Delta. And what a place where you didn't think there would be gang violence Multiple times during the month, we would have been called out, and I have to go onto the parking lot, basically to try to protect my students from gang violence. So this is something I know a lot about, and some of my students were participants in that. And so these are beautiful kids that basically could not have opportunities afforded to them and didn't really have those other choices. And so we have to provide those other opportunities and choices for our kids in Gainesville. We need to partner with Alaska County. We need to partner with the schools. We need to partner with NGOs to provide constructive after-school and opportunities for them, in addition to good education. And finally, I taught at Eastside. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue, this gun violence, and it's something that is a long-term challenge that we have to address by working with communities, working directly with the kids to try to sort of give them hope and make them understand that they have different choices.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Ms. Eastman?
Thank you. I think one of the main contributing factors for violence overall is the historic disinvestment that we've had in Gainesville. As I said when I started off here, District 4 is the only district that runs east to west, and if you're out like I am knocking on doors all across this district, you will see very clearly the infrastructure differences and the choices that were made over successive decades to leave East Gainesville behind and invest in West Gainesville. Now that's more broad, but there's a lot of good data that shows that when you invest in streetlights, you invest in infrastructure within some communities, you will see violence going down. On a more narrow level, what we know is that the vast majority of gun violence occurs from handguns, mostly illegal handguns. We have a lot of control over that. We have Gainesville Police Department, and we talk about gun buybacks during the mayoral portion of it, but really just cracking down on illegal guns and ensuring those are off the street. A lot of these are crimes of passion, people that happen to have guns on them. The more we crack down on that, the more likely we'll be able to reduce this violence that's impacting our communities.
Thank you, Ms. Rayburn. Mike's coming your way.
Yeah, thanks. I disagree with the crackdown statement. We don't need a crackdown. On this one, I'm going to run on my record. 4 years ago, our church bought the old Boys and Girls Club in Lincoln Estates. And over the last 4 years, we've invested over $1 million in that property and in Lincoln Estates. We've got a literacy program. The first thing is you can't give kids hope. It's not a thing you can give. You can give kids caring and nurturing, and then they give themselves hope. So we're teaching kids to read. We've got 80 kids right now that we're raising to grade reading level so they can succeed in school. We've got kids that can honor roll for the first time in their lives. When they get excited about their learning themselves, then the hope generates from within, okay? The second thing, you gotta have space. COVID really messed us up with like places, community centers to do things. And the city can't run all this, and the spaces the city runs, they charge too much rent, and it's too restrictive. You've gotta have community spaces like ours where it's free, like just come play ball. And I've hung out with these kids in Lincoln Estates. They're good kids. They don't need crackdown. They just need support, and they need people on their side. And then, of course, we still need their good jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Rayburn.
So I think the best I ever heard it said was from Tom Robert. And she always says if crime and drugs are more available than opportunities and resources, then crime and drugs become opportunities and resources. That's, to me, what the driving force behind this violence is. People feel desperate, people don't see other opportunities, and that's where they're stuck. I've got a long history working with apprenticeship programs and with our workforce development board here in town to really provide opportunities for people. And I can tell you personally the difference it made in my life and the difference I've seen it make in apprentices that have come up behind me to have a real job that has a real future, that pays a living wage, doesn't just change that like in a generation. You know, you can provide for your children, you can take stress off your family. To fix this is going to take resources, and there's no other way around it. We've got to invest that for this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ingle.
Thank you. So gun violence is unacceptable in our community. I'm a police officer, and you have to do many things simultaneously to deal with decreasing that violence. First, you have to reduce the opportunity to get guns in people's hands. So you do that by things like gun buybacks and providing increased awareness of how to secure our houses and our cars. That's the first thing. You reduce the opportunity, and that leads to number two. We have to deal with our violent offenders swiftly. There need to be stiff penalties. You actually, this is one of the few times as a police officer, I'm going to tell you, you have to make an example of the violent offender so they know it's uncool, because I prioritize our victims and their family over the offenders. Third, our K-12 schools need gang reduction education curriculum. It works. It's the right place. And lastly, in higher education, this has been addressed by a couple of the members up here, you do, for those who are non-violent offenders, you provide career and technical education programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 5, and our final question, is from the Florida Immigrant Coalition and the Alachua County NAACP. The Office of Equity and Inclusion is an important department in addressing grievances and quality of life indicators for historically excluded people in our community. There has been conversation about reducing the number of charter officers. Are you in favor of removing the director of the Office of Equity and Inclusion as a charter officer? Yes or no, and why?
So my answer to this is no. I'll say that I have not heard so much about the conversations of wanting to remove charter officers. And my answer to this is no, is because this community has made that a priority, that it is a decision that it's something we want, that it doesn't just affect our workforce in the city, it affects who we are as a people, who we are to the outside world, who we are to UF, who we are to other employers that come into this community, the next young couple that moves into the community, the next retirees that move into this community. Having a place where it can be a priority, where data can be looked at, where complaints can be heard, where someone is accountable, where someone, if that's what they're doing and they're looking out for, I think it's important. So I had not really heard that specific portion floating around in the community. But my answer to that is no, I don't support removing that as a charter office.
Thank you.
Back to the Building Security City Commissioner. I would not reduce his office, actually I would increase the budget and the proposed increased budget and the effectiveness and the operations of the office to ensure that everybody is included, that we can actually end or at least mitigate our racist tendencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Thank you so much. No, I'm not in favor of that. I think it's very important to have them as a charter officer in Gainesville. Given all of the evidence, given all the studies and the long history that we have of inequity in Gainesville, again, this has been talked about all night, basically the division between East and West, and it's something that growing up here in Gainesville, going to the East Side, being a teacher at the East Side, I've seen and lived. It's really important that we constantly sort of elevate and ask the question, how can we address our equity problems? And again, it's important that we do it within our city government. It's important that we make that as a priority in terms of making decisions. It's important that we do that in terms of trying to think about what kind of things we're going to invest in the future and making sure that those things are equitable. And there are resources and formats and structure as to how we can approach those problems.
Thank you. No, I'm not in favor of removing the Office of Equity and Inclusion as a charter officer. I think it's worth remembering why we had that as a charter officer in the first place. It was Commissioner Rodney Long at the time who wanted to ensure that the EOO who investigates any civil rights violations within the city of Gainesville is completely separated from the city manager's office. That they can be a neutral third party that can look at all of the issues that are going on within the city. And I think that's incredibly important. They recently passed, including a racial equity toolkit within the EOO, which made it the Office of Equity and Inclusion, something I've been pushing for since about 2013, and that essentially reviews all new policies to ensure that it does not have disparate racial impact, that anything that comes up that minority communities or historically disadvantaged communities are consulted and talked with, and that people are not hurt through that. I think that's a great thing. I was really happy to see Commissioner Gail Johnson, when she was on there, be able to pass that. And so I would not be in favor of getting rid of it, and I think that it's incredibly important that remaining neutral.
Thank you, Ms. Eastman. Mr. Ritter? Here it comes.
Thank you. Of course not. Quite the opposite. If I can be pastoral for a moment, racism is the original sin of America. You say that again, racism is the original sin of America. Everything about our society is shot through with race, and especially in Gainesville. I grew up in Plant City, Florida, in the 70s and 80s. Y'all, Gainesville right now is more racist than Plant City was in the 80s. I'm sorry. It's more segregated. It's more divided. Our schools are 90% plus segregated. Thank you. We need the Office of Equity and Inclusion to make sure that everyone has a seat at the Democratic table and all of the voices are heard, especially the voices that don't usually get heard. Give you another book recommendation. Again, Dr. Cornell West, Race Matters, explains what I'm talking about if what I'm saying to you offends you or gives you a hard time. And we can talk about it afterwards. We have to understand everything through the lens of race if we have any hope of enacting justice in our society.
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. Mr. Ingram.
So no, I'm very supportive of that remaining charter officer. There is a historic and continuing inequity in Gainesville. It's obviously one of the most segregated cities I've lived in, but it's also a very diverse city. 10% of our population is immigrants. Making sure that historically disenfranchised people, making sure that people who have just moved to our country, making sure that people that have never had the same respect, opportunities, equity are included in the sound is paramount. Making sure we've got everyone's voice being heard is of course a charter officer. I can't see why anyone would be opposed to it.
Thank you, sir.
So a charter officer gives the leverage and authority to do something objectively, hold others accountable, and make sure every area of the city can do things in a way that means we have a welcoming, diverse, and accessible city of Gainesville. So I absolutely support having a charter officer with that authority sitting up on the dais with the city commission. What I also like is that they can infuse the culture that we want amongst all areas of the city to make sure that we're a city that's welcoming, has good education, and provides values, wages, access, and inclusion for everybody across the board. A charter officer is a good idea.
Well, as the chair of that board, of the City of Gainesville, EEO board, I support the charter officer. We have to understand that we need that office to weed out all the racism, not only within our communities, not only within our school systems, but in the employment of city workers. We have workers in our city that are being discriminated against. I see cases after cases, and you will be surprised at the cases that come before us where we never have anything that found them legit. Since I've been on that board, we found 2 cases that we actually found racist situations. We need to keep him, but we also, I think, need to look at the way that we're doing the process to make sure that the process is covering everything and everybody within our city government, within our local government, and within our community, and that they choose the right thing when they apply, not the wrong things and they get disqualified. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our prepared questions by our hosting coalitions. We have time for 2 audience questions. I'm going to get Ms. Jackson and Ms. Fowler. I will bring you the microphone, darling. You don't have to move.
I want to be clear that I'm going to do my best in order to keep my question as succinct as possible. I want to be clear that yesterday, the shooting that happened in Gainesville was a 20-year-old family member of mine. I want to be clear that the research states the root causes of gun violence are lack of affordable housing, quality affordable housing, lack of adequate education, lack of food access, huge wage disparities, and inequalities. I want to be clear, before I even ask my question, that research shows the way that we address gun violence is not gun buybacks. It is not being hard on violent offenders, and it is not locking people away. I want to give you all, because you all seem to be disconnected from this, and I'm a person that's impacted by it every day, and I'm not well, and I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. My question, because you all keep giving us, and I'm so apologetic that I missed the narrative for it. You keep touting equity. You keep touting that you want to fix what's wrong in our community. It's been a shooting every day this week. My question for each and every one of you is, number one, define equity for me, because that's the issue. And that's how we're going to address gun violence, and give me one definitive plan in order to address the lack of equity in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And we will start with Patrick Engel.
Define equity in here. Right? I agree with
Ms. Jackson?
Ms. Jackson. I agree with you that we don't address gun violence, we're not addressing gun violence properly with that. It just comes down to the housing related. Using that. I'm not sure what the definition of equity is. To me, equity means something better. And that is to improve, to eliminate the racism, to listen, and to improve the opportunities. As other commissions have also said, to improve opportunities to make the hope come from within. So we can't teach hope. We want to use to inspire. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
I'm sorry. Equity to me means equal access to education, to housing, to food, to basically the opportunity to have life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You know, that sounds highfalutin, but that's what it is to me. The thing that I really want to see, and again, as someone who's lived in Gainesville a long time, someone who's been a teacher at Eastside, coached at Eastside, and been a student at Eastside, is like we're just not investing in Eastside, in the Eastside of town. We talk a lot about it, and I know that there are things happening, but you know, it's time that we start doing that, because not only will it address the equity issues, but it will have benefits for all of Gainesville in the long term. And so we have to understand that this is a key issue for us, and it's one of the ways that I want to try to address equity in Gainesville.
Thank you.
Equity to me means that no matter where you're born, where you're raised, where you happen to live, that you should have access to food, that you should have access to a safe street to walk on, that you shouldn't have to worry about where your children are crossing the street, or that you're in fear for your life no matter where you are. That's not true in our city as it is, and that's because of decisions that our city commissioners have made over successive decades. And if they've made those decisions, that means we can unmake those decisions. We can make different decisions. One of the things I'm talking a lot about is directly overseeing affordable housing. Much of our public housing right now was built in the mid-'60s with Great Society money. We need to be doing a housing bond. We need to be finding ways to actually build affordable housing in our community that is directly overseen by our housing partners. And we need to be ensuring that funds are distributed equitably across our city, which, as my opponent said, has not been the case. It's very clear as you go across the city how that's been.
Thank you. And the mic is coming to Mr. Rayburn.
Thank you, Sinead, for the question. I'm so sorry for what y'all are going through again and again and again. Equity to me means every person is honored as the human being that they are, and they're given all the practical support and help that they need to achieve their own dreams, to do what they want to do, to become what they want to become, to have a good quality of life. Everywhere. For some, that's more or less, that's fine. Equity means everyone gets to flourish. And if everyone's not flourishing, then we don't have equity. Immediately what I would do is we've got to fix our bus system so that our existing affordable housing is connected to our centers of job opportunities. It'd take you 3 hours to go from Target to Lincoln Estates on a bus. You can't work over there in Archer Road if you live over here. You gotta fix that. Long-term education, you gotta teach the kids to read. They can figure most of it out after they learn to read, but our kids are not learning to read. Half the kids will learn to read on their own, and our reading scores in Alachua County are 50%. So the kids who can't figure it out on their own are getting no help at all. I know. The last thing you gotta do is we've gotta have more neighborhoods like Lincoln Estates. Y'all already know how to build affordable quality family housing. Phil Limmer did it 60 years ago, right up in here.
Thank you,
We
Mr.
need more of
Engel.
that.
Thank you. Mr. Engel?
This one's personal for me too. I grew up in some pretty rough places. I've lived through a home invasion. I've had my neighbor's house shot up. I know the fear and the stress that comes with being in that situation. Equity, to me, doesn't mean equal treatment across the board. Equity means that we're going to put more resources where there are more barriers. Because an equal amount of resources doesn't help everyone equally. If you're starting off in a hole, an equal amount of help doesn't help. I wish there was one thing we could do. One thing's not going to fix it. It's going to take a long time. I'll tell you, I spent my life working the labor movement, trying to give working people a stronger, more powerful voice and another tool to lift themselves out of danger and out of these struggles. And I'm going to continue doing this. Whether it's as a city commissioner, a president of the union, or just involved in what we can do.
Thank
It's
you,
going to be
Mr.
a
Engel.
long process. It's going to take a long
That takes your time, Mr. Engel. Thank you so much. Mr. Wood?
So I'm sorry for the experience of both yourself and your family. It sounds awful. So formally, equity is equal access and opportunities to things like a roof over your head, good food, public transit, utilities, affordable housing and living. That's formally what equity means. Informally, what it means for me, as a potential city commissioner, as a police officer all my life, is treating people with professionalism and respect and courtesy and kindness and compassion. That is what equity is. And if you do that, you create a welcoming environment for all. It's what I would like to do. It's how I live my life. It's how my family lives my life. And that's what equity means to me.
Thank you, Mr. King.
Ms. Jackson, we're definitely praying for you, and we're sorry what you're going through, but he's able. I will say that equity means to me that across the board, no matter your background, where you come from, what school you go to, your disability, your situation, that it all flows together. That means that what's on Archer Road should be on the east side. The east side should still look like it looked when I was a little boy going to MK Rollins. So we have to spread that around. But also, we have to look at ourselves and see within ourselves, what can we do to bring and help with equity in our communities? Plunge out those people that don't agree, that are not for us, and elect people that are in our corner. Sit at the table with different groups, get advice, get wisdom and knowledge, and understanding. Because I don't know everything, but I can sit with Shanae, she can give me a whole bunch of wisdom, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to apply it. That's what we have to do. That's our community.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
So, equity for me means not just that our policies don't create disparate impacts, but that our outcomes are optimized so that everyone is getting to where they need to go. I think parents instinctively understand that they look at the kids and realize which kid needs a little extra whatever. Attention, love, this, that. I know that my mother identified that I needed an extra protector because I'm, as a young gay man in a house full of boys, just so many boys in my household, she realized that they were going to eat me alive if she didn't support me a little bit. So equity for me is that idea that it's not just that the policies don't have disparate impact, but that you work and you put your resources to making sure that your outcomes are optimized for all people, and that does mean putting more resources to to the kid who needs a little more, needs something a little more. One policy that I think that we should do, inclusionary zoning, is that anywhere you go to develop in a large neighborhood in the city, some of it has to be affordable. Plain old, we tell you, you do it.
Thank you for the opportunity to ask this question. We've listened a lot to two panels tonight. What I want to express, and hear you speak to if you choose, is I want to know where you see yourself fitting in the system that you are going to work under. We know that it's systemically, we are systemically driven. The laws that were written by the great white fathers are still in place. We didn't write those laws. I want to know that you know that what you're telling us you will do can be done, but if it's systemically rotten, you need to know what the system told you you can do, because I want you to work to change the system. I'd like to know what you think about that.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. If you all wanted to address her question, let me know.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I absolutely understand and believe that that we need to work against the system. And one of the things that I've been doing for my career is actually trying to sort of figure out how we can change organizations, how we can sort of build teams, how we can sort of solve problems. One of my core beliefs is being a servant leader, that essentially I'm here to, whether I'm a coach, whether I'm a teacher, whether I'm sort of leading an organization, or if I'm being on the city planning board. Like, I'm here to serve you all, and you are here to serve me. And so we are in this together. And so fundamentally, at my core, this is about service and listening to our public, listening to the citizens, to try to come up with solutions that are going to change the system, because we can change the system. And I look forward to being a city commissioner where I can work with you all and listen to you to try to sort of make these changes that need to be made.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question, because it's true, we need systemic change. I think if we've seen anything over these last couple of years, if we've seen what the Supreme Court has done, what's coming out of Tallahassee, if we want to solve real problems, and if I want to make a better future for my daughter, we're going to have to figure out how we do it here. We're going to have to do it with the school board, which you guys heard from a couple of days ago, with our county and with our local city. And it's one foot in front of the other. We need to be finding real solutions to these problems. That's what I've spent most of my adult life doing. Working at Career Source North Central Florida, creating programs that help get unemployed people back onto their feet. Or as vice chair for Grace Marketplace, we were talking about creating a large homeless shelter a number of years ago using old state property that was a jail. People thought this was crazy. The amount of work that would have to go into it was not feasible. But we did it. Now there's about 200 beds that are open there where people can find a place to lay their head. It takes one foot in front of the other, working with our community, solving problems, which is what I've been doing my entire life.
Thank you. And we are passing that mic for the last time, Mr. Rabel. Thank y'all for your patience.
Ms. Fowler, thank you so much for the question and for all you do for our community. You can tell the system is systeming us when it takes away democracy. Every time they do it, it takes away the votes. We saw this with, they wouldn't let women vote, they wouldn't let black people vote. You can always tell the system is rigging us when they take away your voices, right? When they tell you they know what you need. When you heard Commissioner Ward up here say, well, everyone's just afraid. Y'all are not afraid. You heard one of these people up here talking to you like, well, sometimes your child needs the more help. Y'all are not children. The difference is the wisdom we need comes from y'all. You have the wisdom. And when we bring everyone to the Democratic table and we work our issues out and everyone has an equal voice, that's how we push back against the system. What makes our society work is democracy. And the system is always fighting against democracy, and that's why democracy matters more than anything. And I understand that, and I have a long career of bringing people to the table and making sure they're heard. And I'm ornery like that, and I promise that's what I'll do.
Thank you. Mr. Engel?
So the system, to me, favors the powerful over the people. And the only real way you can change that is people coming together and pushing back. And I've got a history of doing that in Gainesville. I've got experience building coalitions that have made real gains for people here. We got a renters' rights ordinance passed. It's made a huge difference in a lot of lives. We've got a wage theft ordinance passed here that literally employees that were robbed by their employers have had more than $100,000 put back in their pockets because the community came together and we've got actual enforcement of the wage theft in town. My whole life's been in the labor movement and getting workers to stand together to increase their bargaining power and get better wages and benefits for them from the laws there. So how I think we change the system is engagement, is building coalitions, is making sure that we can get people together to push for goals that are better for all of us. I've got experience doing it. I'm very proud of what we've accomplished here in Gainesville so far, and I'm really looking forward to making a bit of change moving forward. Thank you.
So this is one of the most insightful questions we've had all evening from a community leader, and it talks about how do you work within a system to change a system. As 7 members of the City Commission, first you start by role modeling the behavior that you want to see up at the dais. So you treat people civilly and well, and you actively listen to the concerns that are coming in front of you at the mic to determine what your agenda is. Because people will tell us, and we will tell each other, what are the things that we need to get done. That's very, very important. So the first thing you do is you actively listen, and that allows you to change the system by role modeling the behavior you want. What are a couple of examples? Our hiring practices and recruiting practices at the city should be outstanding and catch people across all demographics. Our rental ordinances should be to the benefit of those who are in poverty or need good housing. You actively listen, you role model, you be civil, and you start right there to change the system from within the system. My name is Ed Book, Gainesville City Commission, District 2. Thank you.
So the first thing I think we need to do when we want to change the system is we need to look at ourselves and we see the system that we got, we don't like it. So we must find within ourselves to listen to you. You elect me to do a job. So if you tell me this ordinance ain't gonna work or this is gonna hurt my family, I don't tell you, oh yes, I'm still gonna vote for it. I tell you, no. Let's figure it out together. Let's come to the table. The other thing I think we need to do, you know, it seems like people that really care about this community, we don't want to vote for them. We don't want to give them a chance. We need to start electing people that will fight for you, that understands this community, where we're coming from, what we've been through, and where we're going to. Because if you don't know what we've been through, you can't tell us where we're going to. You can't tell us this will hurt the community. You can't tell us this will hurt our kids. You can't tell us that these different organizations, like the school board, the city of Gainesville, Alachua County, should come together and get a joint plan.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. That takes your time. Thank you so much.
The trust I've built in this community in Gainesville in the 8 years that I've lived here has come because every time someone has come up to me, a group, an individual, a young candidate who needs some help or needs volunteer training, come up to me and said, hey, can you help with this? And just about every time I said, yes, I'll do that. It happens on helping campaigns, it happens with committees, it happens forming a union, and that's how I gain trust in this community. So I do know that I trust that organizations in this community who have been here, who have studied problems, have experienced, their members have experienced, they come to us, whether it's the renters' rights, whether it's the wage theft. These are communities who observe it and they come to us and they work on it. Sometimes it doesn't happen immediately, but I know that those issues are worth fighting for. I'll tell you something about where I do fit in this system. I'm not running for mayor. I want to go back to the job at UF after 4 years or 8 years. I'm not a perpetual politician. This is the first time I've run for city commission or anything. Anyways, Casey, District 3.
Question was, what would or how I see myself in the system? I'm already working with you on campaigning. I'm out establishing relations, I'm out listening, I'm out talking to communities, nonprofits, like the Catholic Charities, and Housing Authority. I'm out talking, people understand what they need. I'm already listening now during my campaign. So I'm listening now, you are going to be listening if you elect me on there. I appreciate the people that serve on committees, and if we they can do better, obviously, if you have the right candidates on the commission. It's up to you to choose the right candidates are able to work together and come, and we still need a majority to pass things, and we have a majority, and people collaborate on saying things for people, we can get things done. Listen, take action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Engel, City Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
Thank you.
Thank you. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the questions that we have for tonight. I would like to thank our candidates, all of our candidates